Trailer trash like you was never meant for higher education anyway, my brother-in-law Tom sneered across the table at our family reunion. His wife Sarah nodded with that practiced smile of hers. Some people just aren't college material. But then my 14-year-old son Michael stood up, shoulders squared, and said, "Actually, my real father is Dean Wilson, the head of admissions at Evergreen University. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. And he's offering me a full scholarship." The clinking of silverware stopped. The smug smiles vanished. In that moment, a secret I'd kept for 15 years changed everything. My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 35, a salon manager at Clips & Curls, in downtown Riverdale, and the single mother of the most incredible young man I've ever known. We live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment that smells like cinnamon and whatever science experiment Michael is working on that week. It's not fancy, but it's warm, it's ours, and it's become our sanctuary from the judgment that's followed me since I was 17. I was always the promising one in my family. Straight A's, debate team captain, early acceptance to 3 state universities. My parents, hardworking people who never finished high school, saw me as their chance to have someone in the family make it. My older sister Lauren went the traditional route, married her high school sweetheart Tom right after graduation, had 2 kids by 21, and settled into life in our small Midwestern town just like everyone expected. Then came my senior year. I fell head over heels for a visiting professor's son who was helping his father for a semester before heading back to his own college. Dean was thoughtful, brilliant, passionate about science and literature. He showed me a world beyond our towns, borders through books and long conversations about life and the universe. We were young, in love, and inevitably careless. By the time I discovered I was pregnant, he'd returned to his university 3 states away. I never told him. Pride, fear, maybe a bit of both. But mostly, I didn't want to be the reason someone gave up their dreams. I'd watched my mother sacrifice everything for my father, and the slow resentment that built in her eyes year after year. I wouldn't do that to anyone, not even the father of my child. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I turned down all my college acceptances. I got my cosmetology license instead at the local community college. I had my baby. I named him Michael after my grandfather, the only person who didn't look at me like I'd ruined my life. My family never let me forget what I'd given up. At every holiday, every birthday, every milestone, there was always some comment. Such a shame about Jessica. She had such potential. They'd say it like I wasn't sitting right there, like I was a cautionary tale rather than a person. I never revealed who Michael's father was. Not to my parents, not to my sister, not to anyone in our small town where rumors spread faster than wildfire. I told them it was a boy from school, who moved away. They assumed the worst, that I'd been used and abandoned. I let them believe it. It was easier than the truth. I didn't want Dean tracked down and burdened with a child he never asked for, a responsibility he never signed up to bear. Michael grew up with questions, of course. Around 8, he started asking about his father. I told him the truth, that his dad was a kind, intelligent man who didn't know about him, and that someday, when he was older, I'd explain everything. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and Michael, even as a child, seemed to understand there was more to the story. As he grew, it became impossible to ignore the similarities. Michael had his father's analytical mind, his love of scientific exploration, his habit of getting so absorbed in a book he'd forget to eat. He had Dean's eyes, that striking hazel that changed colors with his mood. And most remarkably, he had Dean's capacity for forgiveness and understanding, which became increasingly clear as he navigated the complicated dynamics of our family. My sister Lauren and her husband Tom built a comfortable life. He went into his father's insurance business. She became the perfect homemaker. Their children, Emma and Zach, were enrolled in private school, dressed in brand-name clothes, and given every advantage I couldn't provide for Michael. At family gatherings, the contrast was always highlighted, as if to emphasize what happens when you make the right choices versus when you don't. "Jessica, have you seen the tuition bills for Emma's dance lessons?" Lauren would sigh loudly at Sunday dinners. "It's nearly as much as a semester at community college, but it's worth it to give your children every opportunity." I'd nod and smile, trying not to let the sting show on my face. Under the table, Michael would quietly squeeze my hand. He knew. Even as a child, he understood the subtle warfare of words in our family. At 13, Michael started showing remarkable aptitude in science. His middle school teachers called me in for a conference, not for behavior problems or academic concerns, but because they were running out of ways to challenge him. "He's reading college-level material," his science teacher told me, a mixture of awe and concern in her voice. "He's asking questions about quantum mechanics that I can't answer without research." I stood there in the classroom, surrounded by science fair posters and periodic tables, fighting back tears of pride. My son, this beautiful, brilliant person whom the world saw as my mistake, was extraordinary. He was becoming everything I'd hoped for him. Despite the circumstances, despite the whispers, despite the judgment. But the calls from impressed teachers didn't change how my family saw us. To them, Michael was still the fatherless child of the girl who threw away her future. No matter his accomplishments, no matter his potential, that narrative remained fixed in their minds. When Michael turned 14, life took an unexpected turn. His science project on genetic markers won not just the school competition, but the regional one as well. It caught the attention of several university representatives, including someone from Evergreen University, the same school where Dean, Michael's father, had eventually become the head of admissions after a distinguished academic career. I recognized his name immediately when the email came, inviting Michael to visit the campus and meet with the science faculty. Dean Wilson, head of admissions, would personally give them a tour. My heart nearly stopped. 15 years had passed, but seeing his name there on my computer screen brought everything rushing back. His laugh, the way he'd run his hand through his hair when he was thinking, the promises we'd made on starry nights when the future seemed limitless. I told Michael, that night, all of it. Who his father was, why I'd kept it secret, how I'd always planned to tell him when he was old enough to understand. I expected anger, resentment, the hurt that comes from learning you've been living with a half-truth your whole life. Instead, he sat quietly on our worn living room couch, processing everything with the same thoughtful expression he wore when solving complex equations. "I want to meet him," he said finally. "Not to demand anything. Not to disrupt his life. Just to know him." His maturity brought me to tears. "Are you sure? He doesn't know about you. This could change everything." Michael smiled, that gentle, wise smile that seemed too old for his 14 years. "Mom, you've given up everything for me. Maybe it's time we both got something back." So I composed an email to Dean, my hands shaking so badly I had to rewrite it 3 times. I explained who I was, about Michael, why I'd made the decision I had all those years ago. I told him he had no obligations, that we expected nothing, that I only wanted Michael to have the chance to know his father. I hit send and spent the next 24 hours alternating between panic and a strange, liberating relief. Dean's response came faster than I expected. He remembered me, of course. He'd looked for me after returning to university that fall, only to discover I'd seemingly vanished. He'd thought of me often over the years, wondering what path my life had taken. The news that he had a son left him, in his words, speechless, overwhelmed, and eager to make up for 15 years of lost time. The reunion was arranged carefully. A quiet meeting at a cafe halfway between our town and the university. Michael wore his best shirt, the one we'd bought for his science competition. I wore my nervous smile and a dress I'd spent too much money on, wanting to look like I hadn't spent the last 15 years struggling to make ends meet. Dean arrived early. I spotted him through the window, and my heart did the same flip it had done when I was 17. He looked different. More distinguished, touches of gray at his temples. But his eyes were the same. When those eyes landed on Michael, they widened in recognition. The resemblance was undeniable. "He looks just like my father," were Dean's first words when we approached his table. He stood, extended his hand to Michael, then seemed to think better of it and pulled him into a hug instead. I stood awkwardly to the side, watching my past and present collide. The meeting lasted for hours. Dean and Michael discovered shared interests, similar mannerisms, identical methods of explaining complex ideas. They spoke the same language of formulas and theories, finishing each other's sentences like they'd known each other all their lives. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I watched 15 years of guilt and uncertainty dissolve as father and son found each other across the divide I'd created. When it was time to leave, Dean walked us to our car. "I've missed so much," he said quietly to me while Michael climbed into the passenger seat. "I wish you'd told me." "I thought I was doing the right thing," I replied, the familiar weight of justification settling on my shoulders. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "But we have now, and I want to be part of his life, your lives if you'll let me." In the weeks that followed, Dean became a fixture in our world. He came to dinner, helped Michael with projects, filled in the gaps of our lives with his steady presence. He never once expressed resentment for the years lost. Instead, he seemed determined to make every moment count. Then came the invitation to Evergreen University's summer science program for exceptional high school students. Dean secured a spot for Michael, along with the news that a scholarship committee had reviewed his work and wanted to offer him a merit scholarship for when he was ready for college. "It's not special treatment," Dean assured me. "It's recognition of extraordinary talent." I should have known the news would spread through my family like wildfire. My mother called, demanding to know if I'd been in contact with that professor's son all these years. My sister texted snide comments about keeping secrets. And then came the annual family reunion, the gathering I dreaded most each year, where my position as the family disappointment was always reinforced. This year was different, though. Michael had been corresponding with Dean regularly, spending weekends at the university, immersing himself in the world of higher education I'd been forced to abandon. He'd grown taller, more confident. The awkward teenager was transforming into a young man with purpose and direction. And for the first time, I allowed myself to stand a little straighter, too. To remember the girl with dreams and potential who hadn't disappeared, but had simply found a different path. We arrived at my parents' backyard, where the reunion was already in full swing. Lauren's perfect family was holding court by the grill, Tom flipping burgers while loudly discussing their recent vacation to the Bahamas. Emma was showing off her dance recital photos, and Zach was bragging about his baseball scholarship prospects. "Well, look who made it," Tom announced as we approached, his voice carrying just enough edge to make others turn and look. "The salon, Queen, and the science kid. Pull up a lawn chair, if you can afford one." He laughed at his own joke, and several family members chuckled along. I smiled tightly, guiding Michael toward the food table. "Ignore him," I whispered. "Jessica," my mother called, waving us over to where she sat with my aunts. "We were just talking about Emma's college fund. Lauren and Tom have been saving since she was born. So smart of them to plan ahead." The implication hung in the air, unlike me, the one who'd squandered her opportunities. "That's great," I said, serving myself a small portion of potato salad. "Education is important. Speaking of education, Lauren chimed in, Zach's coach says he's practically guaranteed a sports scholarship. Between that and what we've saved, he won't have to worry about student loans like some people. Michael tensed beside me. I placed a hand on his arm, silently urging him to let it go. We'd weathered worse, but Tom wasn't finished. He sidled. Up, beer in hand, that familiar smirk on his face. So, Jessica, started saving for community college yet? Or is Michael going to follow in Mom's footsteps and skip higher education altogether? Michael's education is taken care of, I said quietly, focusing on my plate. Tom laughed. Right. With your salon salary, let me guess, you're planning to cut hair until you're 80 to pay for a semester at state college? Something in me snapped. 15 years of comments, of judgment, of being made to feel less than. 15 years of protecting my son from the narrative that he was somehow limited by my choices. Actually, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. Michael, Mom. Michael touched my arm, stopping me. He set down his plate and looked directly at Tom. I appreciate your concern about my education, Uncle Tom, but actually, I've been accepted to the summer science program at Evergreen University, and I've been offered a merit scholarship for college. Tom's smirk wavered. Evergreen? That's a private university. Those cost a fortune. Merit scholarships are based on achievement, not finances, Michael explained, his voice steady. They're covering everything. Lauren stepped forward, her perfect eyebrows arched in disbelief. How did you manage that? Those programs have waiting lists years long. Michael hesitated, looking at me. I nodded slightly. It was his story to tell now. I met the head of admissions, he said simply. He recognized my work in molecular genetics. The head of admissions just happened to notice some random kid's science project? Tom scoffed. What? Did your mom trade haircuts for college acceptance? The yard went quiet. That was when Michael stood up, shoulders squared, and said the words that would change everything. Actually, my real father is Dean Wilson, the head of admissions at Evergreen University, and he's offering me a full scholarship. The clinking of silverware stopped. The smug smiles vanished. In that moment, a secret I'd kept for 15 years changed everything. The silence that followed Michael's announcement was deafening. I could practically hear everyone's thoughts shuffling and rearranging like a deck of cards. Tom's face flushed, crimson, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Lauren clutched her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles turned white. My mother sank slowly into her lawn chair, her eyes darting between Michael and me. The potato salad on my plate suddenly seemed fascinating to everyone else as they all looked down, avoiding eye contact. For 15 years, I'd imagined this moment, sometimes with dread, sometimes with defiance, but never quite like this. Standing in my parents' backyard, surrounded by plastic cutlery and judgmental relatives who suddenly didn't know what to say. The power dynamic had shifted so dramatically I could almost hear it crack like ice beneath our feet. Dean Wilson? My father, finally said, breaking the silence. The professor's son from your senior year? The one who left town before graduation? I nodded, feeling strangely calm amid the chaos. My heart should have been racing, but instead I felt an unexpected steadiness. Like finally setting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. Yes, Michael's father. We reconnected recently when Michael's science project caught the university's attention. Dean recognized Michael's name on the submission and reached out to me. You've been lying to us for 15 years? Lauren's voice cracked with indignation. You let us believe... I let you believe what was easier for you to accept, I cut in, surprising myself with my steadiness. That I was just another statistic, another cautionary tale. Would any of you have believed me if I'd told you Michael's father was a brilliant young man headed for a doctorate? Or would you have accused me of trying to elevate myself with fantasies, Lauren flinched as if I'd slapped her. We both knew the answer. The family had been so quick to cast me in the role of failure, so eager to make me the example of what happens when you make wrong choices. "This isn't possible," Tom insisted, his earlier confidence crumbling. "There's no way." "DNA doesn't lie, Uncle Tom," Michael said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed a photo of him standing with Dean in a university laboratory, their matching smiles and identical eyes undeniable. "We've been getting to know each other for the past few months. He's been mentoring me on advanced genomic sequencing techniques that most high schoolers never get exposed to." My mother rose unsteadily to her feet, setting down her iced tea with a trembling hand. She looked suddenly older, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. "Jessica, why didn't you tell us? All these years. We could have helped." "Could you have?" I asked, meeting her gaze. "Would you have supported me reaching out to Dean? Or would you have seen it as me trying to trap him? Would you have encouraged Michael's relationship with his father? Or would you have worried about what the neighbors might think? Would you have believed he was actually interested in being part of our lives?" Her silence was answer enough. She looked down at her sensible shoes, the ones she'd worn to church for as long as I could remember. "Mom, when I got pregnant, the first thing you said to me wasn't, 'Are you okay?' It was, 'What will people say?' That told me everything I needed to know about who I could count on." She dabbed at the corner of her eye with a napkin. I hadn't meant to make her cry, but 15 years of unspoken truths were suddenly finding their voice, and I couldn't stop them now if I tried. "I made choices," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "Not all of them perfect, but they were mine. I chose to raise my son without burdening a young man with responsibilities he never asked for. I chose to build a life on my own terms. And now, I've chosen to let Michael know his father. I won't apologize for any of that." My cousin Becky, who had always been the family peacemaker, stepped forward with a tentative smile. "So you two reconnected after all this time? That's kind of romantic, isn't it?" Before I could correct her assumption, my Aunt Patty chimed in. "Is there going to be a wedding? Are you moving to the university town?" "My goodness, Jessica, this is like something from a movie." I felt a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in my chest. Of course, they would immediately try to package this into something neat and conventional. A love story with a happy ending that would make my past mistakes more acceptable. "Dean and I aren't a couple," I clarified, keeping my voice level. "We're co-parents now, trying to do what's best for Michael. That's all." "For now," my mother murmured, a hint of hope in her voice that made me want to simultaneously hug her and shake her. "And Dean?" my father asked, his voice softer than I'd expected. "What does he want?" That was my father, always practical, always getting to the heart of things while everyone else got caught up in the drama. For all his faults, he had never been one to waste words or emotions. "He wants to be in Michael's life," I replied, simply. "He regrets the years he missed, but he's grateful for the chance he has now. He's not asking for anything from me, if that's what you're worried about." "I wasn't worried," my father said, looking slightly offended. "I just want to know if he's going to step up, be a real father, not just throw money at the situation and call it a day." The protectiveness in his voice surprised me. For 15 years, I'd felt like I'd disappointed him beyond repair. Maybe I'd been wrong about that too. "He's actually pretty cool," Michael added with a small smile. "He's been helping me develop my research on genetic markers. That's what got me the scholarship. And he showed me the university's basketball court. Said he'd teach me to play if I wanted." "Your grandfather could teach you basketball," my father said gruffly. "I taught your mother. She had a decent jump shot in high school." "You did?" Michael looked at me with new interest and I had to laugh. "There's a lot you don't know about me, kid," I said, ruffling his hair. A strange shift occurred in those moments. The family that had looked down on us for so long seemed to shrink somehow, their judgments and assumptions exposed as the hollow things they were. Across the yard, my younger cousins were watching with wide eyes. My elderly aunt was nodding slightly, a hint of approval in her gaze. Tom, never one to surrender the upper hand easily, forced a laugh. "Well, isn't that convenient? Your long-lost daddy just happens to be someone who can get you into college." "Tom," Lauren hissed, sensing the tide turning. "No, it's okay," Michael said, looking older than his 14 years. "I understand why you'd think that, but the scholarship committee didn't know about Dean being my father when they reviewed my work. Dean insisted on recusing himself from the process because of our relationship. He's actually pretty strict about ethical guidelines." Uncle Tom's face reddened even more. He was used to being the smartest person in the room, the one with all the answers. Being corrected by a teenager, especially one he'd written off, clearly stung. "Look," Michael continued, his voice steady. "I know this is weird for everyone. It's weird for me too. 3 months ago, I thought my dad was just some guy Mom dated in high school. Now I'm getting to know him, and it turns out we're a lot alike. I'm not trying to show anyone up, I'm just figuring things out." The sincerity in his voice seemed to deflate even Tom's defensiveness. My son, my brilliant, compassionate son, was handling this entire situation with more maturity than most of the adults present. "The truth is," I added, "Michael earned this on his own merit, just like I've earned everything we have. It may not be a big house or luxury vacations, but it's ours, and I'm proud of what we've built together." I felt Michael's hand slip into mine and squeeze gently. It was a gesture of solidarity he'd been making since he was small, a wordless, "I'm with you," that always gave me strength. My mother stepped forward hesitantly. "Jessica, we never meant to make you feel less than. We were just worried about you, about both of you." "Worried looks different than judgment, Mom," I said gently. "One asks questions. The other makes assumptions. For 15 years, none of you have asked me anything real about my life, about Michael, about what matters to us. You've just assumed you knew the whole story." "We assumed what you told us," Lauren interjected, her voice defensive but weaker now. "I told you what you were ready to hear," I replied. "What you wanted to hear. A story that fit neatly into your worldview about choices and consequences." Lauren opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. For perhaps the first time since, we were teenagers. I saw uncertainty in my perfect sister's eyes. An unexpected voice joined the conversation. My niece Emma, Lauren's perfectly polished 15-year-old daughter, moved closer. "Is it true about the science program at Evergreen? I've read about it online. It's supposed to be amazing." Michael nodded. "It is. They have equipment most research universities don't even have. You should see their electron microscope lab. Last week, Dean showed me how they're using it to study cellular aging patterns." "That sounds really cool," she said, a genuine interest lighting her eyes. "I've actually been thinking about biochemistry myself, but..." "But what?" Michael prompted. Emma glanced at her parents. "Mom and Dad always talk about me following Mom into business management. Dad says science doesn't pay the bills unless you're at the top." I saw Tom shift uncomfortably. Lauren looked stricken, as if seeing her daughter clearly for the first time. "That's not true at all," Michael said. "There are tons of careers in science. The lab techs at Evergreen start at way more than most business grads make. And if you love what you're doing, that's worth something too, right?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "That's what I keep saying, but no one listens." "I'm listening now," Lauren said quietly, her eyes meeting mine across the yard. In that moment, something passed between us, recognition perhaps of a pattern, repeating. She caught my eye, and for the first time in years, I saw something other than judgment there. It might have been understanding, or maybe just uncertainty. "You know," Lauren said slowly, "your cousin might be a good resource if you're interested in science, Emma. Maybe Michael could tell you more about the programs he's looked into." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was an opening, a small crack in the wall that had stood between us for 15 years. As the afternoon wore on, the usual family dynamics began to reassert themselves, but with subtle differences. My uncle still told his bad jokes, but he included Michael in the punchlines rather than making him the target. My aunts still gossiped, but they asked me genuine questions about my work at the salon instead of treating it as a consolation prize. And Tom, though still clearly uncomfortable, kept his comments to himself. When we were preparing to leave, my mother pulled me aside. "I wish you'd told us about Dean," she said, her voice low. "About who Michael's father really was." "Would it have made a difference?" I asked. "Would you have seen me differently if you'd known Michael's father was educated, successful? Would that have made my choices more acceptable?" She looked away, unable to deny the truth we both recognized. "I just wanted more for you, Jessica." "I know, Mom. But this is my more. It's different than what you imagined. But it's mine. And it's enough." Dean called that evening as Michael and I were unpacking leftover potato salad and avoiding discussions about the family reunion. When I told him about what had happened, he laughed. That same warm laugh I remembered from when I was 17. "So I've become your secret weapon against judgmental relatives?" he asked. "Not intentionally," I assured him. Michael just got tired of the comments. "Good for him. And good for you, Jess. It's about time they saw you both clearly." After we hung up, I found Michael sitting on our small balcony staring at the stars. I joined him, remembering all the nights I'd sat in this same spot, rocking him as a baby, wondering if I'd made the right choices. "Did you mean what you said today?" he asked without looking at me. "About not regretting your choices?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret that you didn't know your father sooner. I regret that my pride kept me from reaching out to Dean years ago. But I don't regret you, Michael. Not for a second. And I don't regret the life we've built, even with all its struggles." He nodded, seeming satisfied. "I think I understand why you did it. Why you kept the secret. You were protecting him as much as us." "I was trying to," I agreed. "Though I'm not sure anymore if that was the right call." "It doesn't matter," he said, turning to face me. "We're here now. All of us." The next morning, an email arrived from Dean. He'd been thinking about our situation and had a proposal. Evergreen University had a staff housing program, and there was a small 2-bedroom unit available. Would Michael and I consider relocating closer to campus? The salon where I worked had a sister location in the university town, and he'd already checked. They had an opening for an experienced stylist. It wasn't a marriage proposal. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something more valuable. A chance to build something new, something that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. 3 weeks later, we packed our modest belongings into a U-Haul. My mother came to help, bringing boxes she'd saved and curtains she'd sewn for our new place. It was her way of supporting without words, and I accepted it as the peace offering. It was. As we were closing the truck, my phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "Emma wants to visit during your first weekend there. Dean mentioned a campus tour. Is that okay?" I smiled, thinking of my niece's sudden interest in biochemistry and my sister's tentative reach across the divide between us. "The beginning of something new?" Michael asked, noticing my expression. "Maybe," I replied. "Or just the continuation of a story that's been writing itself all along." We drove away from the apartment that had sheltered us through difficult years, toward a future neither of us had imagined possible. I glanced at my son beside me, this extraordinary person who had found his father and in doing so, had helped me reclaim parts of myself I'd thought were lost forever. I don't know what will happen with Dean and me. Some embers never quite go out, but 15 years is a long time, and we're different people now. What I do know is that my son will have the opportunities I once dreamed of for myself. He'll have his father's guidance alongside mine. And I'll have the chance to finish my own education, to expand my horizons beyond what I'd believed possible. Sometimes the most profound revolutions in our lives aren't dramatic rebellions or grand gestures. Sometimes they're quiet reclamations, gentle reminders that our stories aren't finished just because we've experienced a difficult chapter. Last week, a package arrived from my sister, a framed family photo from the reunion taken after Michael's announcement. In it, we're all slightly disheveled, the perfect family facade cracked open. But there's something real in the awkward smiles, something honest in the way we're all a little off-center in the frame. Tucked inside was a note in Lauren's precise handwriting. "We've been wrong about so many things. I'm sorry it took us so long to see you both clearly. It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning, and sometimes that's enough. My salon opening shift starts in an hour. Michael is spending the day at the university lab with Dean. Tonight we're having dinner together, not to make up for lost time, but to honor the time we have now. I look at my reflection in the mirror as I get ready, seeing not the girl who once gave up her dreams, but the woman who found new ones. They laughed when I couldn't afford college all those years ago. They whispered and judged and made assumptions about my worth based on my circumstances. But now my son walks the halls of a prestigious university, guided by his father's wisdom and his own brilliant mind. And I walk alongside them both, no longer shrinking, no longer apologizing, finally taking up the space that was always rightfully mine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.